All right. So, welcome to the Saturday morning call. It's the 25th of December or January. And this morning, Daniel has a question. So, Daniel, go ahead and state your question, state your topic. Your microphone is muted.
Yeah, sorry. So the topic is I'm entering new employment soon. Fine. That's fair enough. I can work, I can make money, I can have food and shelter. But deep down, I don't really want to work. I kind of hate working. I kind of hate being a wage slave. So like, I don't know. I don't know what to do with that. There's some probably fear of diverting from sort of that normal path though. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, that's a good enough topic to talk about. Um,
Yes.
Let us start off by talking about it from um, when I was an employee with IBM way back in the late 1960s is probably was when this was happening. But I remember when I was on my way to visit clients, driving in the car. This was in rural South Carolina, and so we were all over the place. We were stationed in Florence, but we had customers in Darlington, in Dillon, um, Matthews, all over, as well as most of the clients were in Florence. So on my journeys, I would muse about how much money that it would take for me to save up so that I could retire completely. And back then, my figure was I could do it on $5,000. That if I could somehow save up 5,000, you know something, I never did save up 5,000 way back when. The times just didn't support it. But that thought was already there. So, um, after a few years and a master's degree in electrical engineering, I wound up teaching computer science at a Detroit University, Detroit Institute of Technology. That allowed me then to take the summers off, and I started spending that time in India. After a while, I actually was able to quit that job and kind of wing it. I could go so far as to say that the old story was is that I've retired 4 times. Actually, I retired even more often than that. But somehow or another, those early retirements didn't stick. I'd always have to go back to work a bit. Um, and it was only until I'd gotten to watch Suan Moke that I found out exactly what the Sangha was all about, and that you could say then that the Buddha set up the Bhikkhu Sangha to answer the exact question that you have today of how in the world can an individual, man or woman, find a way to support themselves without having to do it within the environment that existed in the time of the Buddha, which was basically slave labor on somebody's farm or plantation. And a lot of the plantation owners, a lot of the farm owners, they also came to the Buddha, but they would generally not join the Sangha because the Buddha would send them back to their plantations to run it in a noble fashion, which means basically is hand it over to the wife and let her run the plantation while the plantation owner sat on his veranda, sat on his piazza, sat on his porch, and practiced Dhamma. But all of those hundreds and hundreds of years, we have had an exploitive kind of a system, an exploitive kind of a government, that in fact, any time that a government gets very large, it is always exploited by the very wealthy. That's happened in the United States. It certainly happened in the Roman Empire. You could say that, in fact, it happened in the British Empire too. Every time that a group gets big, it gets so big that everybody on the bottom rebels against it. That, in fact, that's looking like what's happening in Russia right now. And it's also looking like that it's happening in China right now, with the laid back, let it rot mentality that was in Russia, that was in China. But now China's got even more of a problem, because in the past 2 years, all of the Western um, big companies and organizations have left China, and it looks like that the big cities, even those that were populated, are emptying out. People are going home. That China, as an empire, is falling apart. And you could say that that's kind of happening also in Europe, all over the place. Indian rupee is falling apart. Uh, it hasn't come to the point of being a worldwide recession, but we have it in the sense of people are beginning to not have the availability of a job. We were taught from the 1950s that you got to have a job in the United States. After World War II, things got very productive to rebuild Europe and bringing all the American soldiers' homes and put them in college, put them in the work environment. It was all a very work-oriented society. But then again, especially since the 1970s, the big money has taken over. Wages have not increased. Making a living seems to be a harder and harder thing to do all over the world. Now, several years ago, we were speculating hot and heavy about what's going to happen to the jobs when AI takes over. An example of where AI has already taken over is on the large farms, that we only need farm workers on the farms that grow crops, that they haven't figured out how to do it with a machine yet. But strawberries and fruit trees like apple and orange and whatnot have all gotten to the point that they don't need much labor anymore, because they've got machines to do the job. And now that the Cyberbot, the Tesla robot, is going to be coming on, a lot of the jobs that used to be done by humans are going to be taken over by those robots. So here's a question for you, David or Daniel. What if there is no job for you to be taken over, and at the same time, you've still got this mentality of you've got to have a job? That's a die-hard kind of thing, that our society doesn't support a big population where most of the people are unemployed. You got your mic.
Right. Yeah. Like, most people's life framework is built upon having a job. It's like very standard. Like, that's the most common thing. Yeah. But I don't think that'll actually happen. don't think like most of the jobs will be replaced, but I just hate working regardless. Like I don't want to have a job. You know what I mean?
Well, there will
But I can
also be
I
the
can push
issue
through
of
working. I
declining
can tolerate
population.
working too.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I mean I can tolerate working. It's fine. I can push through it. But also I would like to say that I have no preference, because that's the ideal way to not suffer regardless of what happens. But I don't know. I don't like the idea of being bound by like employment. But it's hard to find like a feasible alternative other than becoming a monk. But I don't want to be a monk.
Well, not this year.
So what do you think about that?
Well, the thing of it is that if we can find noble friends, find noble communities, those communities don't have to be set up the way that the Sangha is set up. That in fact there's many different kind of opportunities. One example would be at the Goenka retreats. The retreat centers have a staff. Most of the staff is not well paid. In fact, they're not even paid at all. They're called volunteers, except that what they do need is being taken care of. There's going to be more and more opportunities like that in the future. So retreat centers and Zen centers all over will have accommodations for people at least to sleep on the floor. You also have in now, not just in America, but more and more all over, you're having a homeless population because the prices of real estate have been going up all over the world. And that's kind of interesting because what's going to happen to worldwide real estate when the population starts to decrease? And in fact, there's only a few places left in the world where women have enough babies to make the population grow. In South Korea, it's down to 1.2. Now, the standard is that a woman should have 2.1 children on average in order to sustain the population. Well, the United States doesn't have that. Our indigenous population rate is like 1.7. In South Korea, it's very low at 1.2, 1.3. So the population is going to be declining. If we can look at it from the perspective of the prior generations built a society to support 8 billion people, and there's going to be 7, 6, 5 billion people on the planet Earth. Real estate prices are going to go down, housing is going to be easily available, etc., like that. But basically, we'll have to see that the people have to be on their own. You either are part of a commercial organization or you can join some sort of Sangha organization. But the mentality is that we have to work to eat. Now, the biggest problem that I've seen is that every child that's built into our system was trained from childhood to do something that you were told to do, and we do it, but we don't like it. For instance, very few children actually learn and enjoy learning the multiplication tables. Well, now I don't even think they even teach multiplication tables. Every child is given a calculator, and so we don't learn the multiplication tables by heart. We also are taught to read. We have to learn to read. But how many people enjoyed learning to read? Very few. Now we kind of read when we do read for pastime, but most people don't have really a good attention span to be able to actually read. The same thing is true with all of the other stuff that we learned in school. We learned it only because we were supposed to learn it, we had to learn it, and we didn't enjoy learning it. So now we've got an entire workforce who are working at jobs that no one enjoys doing. And I suppose that that's going to happen when people become unemployed. In fact, the unemployed seem to be miserable. I would think that the unemployed would be the most happy people there are, because they don't have to work. And they're on unemployment or something, and then there'll be some other system. But the unemployed actually are afraid. That's not good enough for them to be unemployed, and so they seek employment. So, where does the Dhamma come in with this? Well, the Dhamma would teach us that never mind whether you're employed or not. Never mind whether you're you like your job or you don't like your job. That's always irrelevant. The point is can you learn to control your own mind? Can you learn to be happy in this present moment? That in fact, the way that I would teach the people is that when you're thinking about quitting your job because you hate it so much, then the right thing to do is to get your mind into a happy state consistently over and over again. And now that you're happy on a regular daily basis, then you now can evaluate the job that you have as to whether it's worth keeping or not, because your happiness doesn't depend upon the job. That whatever you're doing, you can do happily, okay, not a worry, no problems. But a lot of the jobs that we have, in fact, most of the jobs, I would say, wind up being some kind of unwholesome. The job itself is unwholesome. An example of that is selling. The salespeople, most people don't want to buy anything at all. We feel poor. We don't feel like we've got enough money. And so the whole system of selling is to sell something that nobody wants to buy. And your job is to lie, cajole, trick, etc., like that, to get them to buy stuff. Also, a lot of the stuff that we have in manufacturing pollutes. It pollutes the streams, it pollutes the atmosphere. And so many of the jobs that are available are actually having unwholesome qualities to it. Probably the most obvious would be when you're in the military. If your job is being in the military, then the whole point of you being in the military is to hurt people. The same thing, by the way, is true with taking jobs, let us say, in the police force. Being a policeman is a very unwholesome situation. And so I would recommend anyone who is a policeman, if they want to actually be happy in their life, if they want to practice the Dhamma, they should consider not being a police, not being military, not being a salesman. In fact, not being a factory owner to sell the factory. In fact, if you own a factory, you're already ready to retire. The factory is probably worth more than you really need to spend for the rest of your life. And so this is the way that we can begin to think of it, is most jobs are unwholesome. Most jobs are trying to make money. And the thing that's one point to make is that whatever job that you can get, The management will hire you only because they see their own profit in your employment, which means then that they're not about to pay you what you're worth. They want to make a profit off of you too. And so almost all jobs are exploited. They're an exploitation. But we can find uh, ways around that. An example would be here in Thailand, not necessarily worldwide, but in Thailand, there are fairly strict laws about Westerners working in Thailand without um, having a work permit. And so people can take on small jobs and find ways of getting paid by the Thai people. They're very, very slick with that. One example would be that at a Thai school that teaches Thai language and other things, that they will have volunteers that can help them do stuff, and they'll feed you, give you free tuition, help you with your visas and other things like this. So that's an example of how to do things happily without actually being employed. That almost all employment is an exploitation. Like I said, in the time of the Buddha, almost all employment was kind of a slave labor. They called them Sudras. In Eastern Europe, they were called serfs. In the United States at one time, they were called slaves. But everybody is put to work because they don't have much of a choice about it. And now we are teaching our children that you don't have much choice. You've got to go to work. Now, there's an old joke about that. The high school football coach at halftime has his football team in the locker room. And the coach's job is to pep them up. They're a little bit behind, and so he's saying, yeah, we can go do this. We've got it made. We're going to get this team. We're going to get this job. And then when it's time for them to go, they all get up with a great big roar and yay, and they're all pumped up, and the door's locked. And they can't get out, okay? So that's what we're finding, and there's going to be more and more of that is that we're all pumped up to go to a job, and the door is going to be locked. There's not going to be that many jobs anymore. So what are we going to do? Well, one of the things that will happen is that people will go through various stages, and sometimes those stages will be very, let us say, massive, so that for a while, the sports clothing and the sports equipment manufacturing is going to have a great big boom for maybe 5 or 10 years, and then that's going to fall off. People will get tired of being in the sport simply because that's the only thing left to do. So actually, in a way, this is a perfect opportunity, maybe the first time in history, the opportunity for the entire population of the world to practice Dhamma. So that we have the mentality, there's no place to go, there's nothing to do, everything is already okay, I've got enough. And we can begin to live poorly, happily. You see, throughout all of history, poverty has been a dirge. Poverty, everybody's really, really unhappy when they're poor, simply because they haven't been taught to control their minds. But if you look also throughout history, all of the big Zen masters, all of the Buddhist monks of any note, they live a life of poverty, and they're beautiful. They're good to go. So that's the way that we can plan on for ourselves, is to be in a really, really good state, no matter what your financial situation is. That in fact, I've lived for many years as a monk And then after Social Security kicked in, by the time that I was 65, I had retired from the monkhood. That's a funny little story that I say is that I joined the monkhood in 1984. I became a monk so that I could properly retire from the world, get away from the world. And then when I was 65, I was, because of Social Security kicking in, guess what? Now I can retire from the life of the monk, just completely retire. Now the question will be, what governments, and some governments will and some governments won't. In fact, it might take a kind of a revolution so that everybody has some sort of stipend, maybe $1,000 a month to live on. And many people say, I can't live on $1,000 a month. Well, you can if you don't spend any of that $1,000. You can start making money. You can start piling it up in the bank if you don't spend it. So even if we don't have any income, we can, let us say, find ways to live together comfortably. We can move into an organization and live happily and comfortably. And the point that I'm making right now is not pie in the sky or someday, but basically we're talking about in the next 20 to 50 years, this is basically going to be our only option. That in fact, going back to my time at IBM, when I was with IBM, my mentality is that all computers are going to take over everything. Now, this was the mentality back in 1968, 69. The computers haven't taken over yet, but they might very well do it eventually. But my thought back then was, well, at least computer repairmen, engineers who are going to be maintaining those pieces of equipment will have a job. But I was looking at it more from the unit record equipment mentality that IBM had. That's what I was working on mostly. I didn't start working on computers right away. I first started working on what they called unit record or punch card equipment, which was highly mechanical and required a lot of maintenance. The same thing was true about automobiles back in those days, is that automobiles, the biggest industry in the United States was not automobile manufacturing, it was automobile repair shops. But nowadays, the cars are going to be less unreliable. There's going to be less use for service engineers. That the Tesla robots will probably wind up having Tesla robot repair centers manned by Tesla robots. And so the job market, even for repair people, is going to go down. That the equipment that we manufacture is going to be more reliable and easier to service over time. Now, for a while, the automobile industry actually made most of their money by spare parts and service. But that model in the United States got eaten up by Japanese, where the Toyotas and the Hondas were more reliable than the American cars. That's why the Japanese cars really came in to take over in the United States, and the U.S. automobile industry has never recovered from that. So we can look at it from that perspective also, is that the maintaining of all of the equipment is going to be easier to do, and most of that maintenance is going to be done by other machines, not humans. We're going to be left with very little or nothing to do, except if we've got the Dhamma. Well, even before that day comes, we can still now that we have an opportunity now that we know, we can say, okay, well, I'm going to turn my life around from being the workaday guy, the one who works for a living and doesn't enjoy it and wants to be unemployed. Let's begin to see that the job is not the important thing in life. The important thing in life is going to be your well-being, your happiness. So let's start spending our time developing that rather than trying to spend our time getting a promotion or spending our time doing a good job at work. Let's start spending our time enjoying our moment. Moment by moment, everything is okay. Everything is just fine. But we have to practice that because we have been trained, literally, to be miserable in order to be exploited. That you cannot, in fact, exploit a happy group of people. This is exactly why the military all over the world, they want young people. They don't want middle-aged dudes. If you get somebody that's 45 or 50 standing in front of the drill instructor while the drill instructor laughs, yells at him, an older man is just going to joke around or not take the DI seriously. It's only young people, which equates with inexperienced people, which more equates with stupidity. And that's who is put into the military, is people who can be trained in a military situation. And a much better training would be is to train to be happy. Anybody who is truly happy, who is in the military, is not going to be in the military very long. They're going to leave the military. If you found a cop who was a truly happy person, he's not going to remain a cop. Cops are trained to be liars. Cops are trained to be bullies. Cops are trained to look for problems. And in fact, you probably have heard that cops have a high reputation of having domestic violence, that they're a cop all day and they go home and they're a cop at home and they wind up arresting or beating their wife because they can't get out of that mindset. But if somebody is in the mindset of everything is okay, no problems here, no worries, he's not going to be making it as a cop. Cops are there to enforce the law. There's a forcing involved with it. The same thing is with all the other jobs, that you're forced to do something. And that very few of us are actually in the realm of learning to be happy, learning to not use force on yourself or other people, learning to become harmless, learning to make it easy, have an easy life. But as I say, we have to train to do that. The Buddha talks about it as a training, and he was talking about it 2,500 years ago, where people, let us say it like this. I've seen it in the suttas to where the way that the Buddha saw young people is that they were greedy, they were out to have pleasure, they were pleasure seeking. Nowadays, the young people are not trained to seek pleasure. They do that on their own. What they're trained to do instead is to be abused by our society. And so we need to come out of that two-step kind of old training, the training of looking for pleasure and the training of doing what you're told to do, whether you like it or not. And as we are able to make that training, we can come into the Dhamma and become more happy. So, Daniel, what do you think about this?
I think I agree with all that. I think what's lost on the average American or just average person in general is the potential to, adapt your own preferences, adapt your own attitude, instead of just trying to change things outwardly to make yourself happy, not seeing that is like kind of hopeless in the long run. But even recognizing that, I still have preference not to work, you know?
Okay. So why don't you begin to look at ways to where you don't have to work? Because that's going to
Oh, I
come
do.
anyway. Yeah. So what are your options to working?
Well, I could be like homeless,
All right.
or like a monk, or I
Mhm.
could like live in my car and like only work a little bit, kind of
All right.
thing.
I
But
understand
that doesn't
that. But in
sound like
fact,
that much fun. That sounds kind of awful. Maybe it's
right.
fun. I don't know.
But that's
What
very,
about being
very
a homesteader?
limited.
Sorry.
What was that? Go ahead, Lars.
I study this modern survival. You can become a homesteader. People
Yeah,
things
yeah,
where you know.
yeah. That sounds like a lot of fun. Like just to have a log cabin and like have your needs taken care of and be able to be very solitary. But
Depends on what lifestyle. I
You
like
don't have.
spending.
Go ahead, Lars.
I like spending time in Maine. I go up there and I cut firewood and I get exercise and then I feel tired and I take a nap. But I on that um, some people live in Alaska. You need a snowmobile and you so that you bears or something. But I not as and there's people. I know how to gather very nutritious Indian potato and grow.
Daniel, turn your mic off because Daniel, turn your mic off because Lars has echoes also. Go ahead, Lars. I think we can hear you better now.
People raise chickens, goats, quail are very much easier to raise. You get a lot of eggs from quail, and you own a few acres in a rural area. It's cheaper. There's less rules. You can live in a small structure and grow some squash or whatever what it may be, and have your own firewood and to have a wood stove, or there's all kinds of different. There's a whole community, survival podcast, and there's all kind of. He does a show all the time about, they're a little bit libertarian, but I'm not libertarian, but he's got all kinds of things that people live in different places, and some of them live in mobile homes and trailers, or they know where to, it's cheaper to live, and they're all talking to each other about all this kind of stuff and how to live off the land or into gardening and permaculture gardening and small scale farming and aquaculture, raising tilapia. Down south you can raise tilapia and grow all kinds of different things, sweet potatoes down south. And I mean, there's a whole community, Jack Spirko's survival podcast community. I find it interesting. I'm not really heavy into it, but I kind of keep up with it. And I have an alternate plan that I might move to Maine someday, or I thought about Tennessee or places where the cost of living is cheaper and or out west. And I don't think I'd want to live in Alaska, but I did, research that at one time.
All right. So, Lars, what we're
I've kind of looked
talking
into that
about.
stuff too. Yeah.
Yes.
Huh?
So,
I would want to. I'm interested in that whole thing, but I'd want it to like be somewhat.
Literally grown ass man. Like,
What's that?
what was that, Rachel?
Is my mic muted? Is it not muted? I'm not
I
sure.
can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay. That's a mistake. That's a mistake.
All right. So, what Lars is talking about and what Daniel is mentioning also is ordinary people. Back in the 1960s and 70s, there was what we called then the hippie movement. Those who were tired of the war in Vietnam, they were looking for all the solutions. Some of them became famous. One of them was Wavy Gravy. And what they eventually worked out was is to start communes. That in fact, I've seen communes in Australia. I've seen communes in Tennessee. I've seen them all over the place. And that the problem with the communes is that they were founded only upon this idea of getting away from society, but they were not founded in the Dhamma. They were not founded in people taking their time to get their mind together. They were more interested in making crops. They were more interested in building the commune than they were in getting their own mind together. So this is the real issue, is not the job. The issue, in fact, about jobs becomes kind of irrelevant. That the real issue is, can you get your mind together? Can you practice the Dhamma well enough so that at any time those thoughts of, oh, I hate this job come up, we can take that unwholesome thought out of the mind and put the wholesome thought in of, well, right now it's okay. Right now, you see, almost all real disappointment has to do with the future. Now is okay, but it's not going to be good for long. Things are going to go crap. That we feel kind of stuck in a job, but in fact the point is that even where we're stuck, it's still kind of okay. There's no real problem right here, right now, except that we have the thoughts of it's not okay. The reality, and I have to want to stress this over and over again, the reality is that everything is okay no matter what situation we have on the outside. Okay, whether there is slavery or whether AI is taking over, those kind of two extremes, it doesn't matter. What really matters is, can each individual person be happy? Even if you're in a state of slave labor, if you're forced to work. If you're enjoying what you're doing, then there's not much force to it. The slaves that get whipped are the ones who resist whatever lot that they find themselves in. So the question is, can you begin to enjoy the situation that you're in? The answer to that is that you have to train the mind to be happy the way things are. And if you become really, really happy with the way things are, now you can begin to make some wise decisions about, can I go be happy someplace else? Go ahead, Ivan.
I just realized for me, for many years, one of the problems is stuck. It's stuck in the thinking of like how the world can be a better place. Like when you were mentioning about the slavery example, I catch myself, the mind very quickly goes, well, doesn't that sound very extreme? But then I realized that's the problem, because I always try to think about like there's a lot of like judgment in the world. Like my mind keep going outward, trying to fix something, and then I make myself getting attached to a lot of like what is good or what is bad, and that kind of makes me suffer a lot.
Yes, Ivan. When back in the 1970s, as I was teaching university, I began to spend the summers and more time in Asia until I finally quit the job and learned to wing it, just being what we called back then a Dhamma bum. The problem, though, was that I was traveling around all over India. There's very few places in India that I haven't been. There's very few states in the United States that I haven't been. The problem was in all of that traveling was that I was going from one place to another looking for something, not finding it there, and so going someplace else looking for something and not finding it. Over and over and over again. That's what happens with travelers, is they're looking for something. They've heard that, oh, there's a paradise beach on Kopangan. Let's go stay on that beach. And while they're on that beach, the beach itself is paradise, but between their ears, it's a kind of a hell. So the problem, as we were saying there, Ivan, is that it's not your situation. The question is, can you be happy and comfortable where you are in the situation that you're in? Instead of trying to change the situation, Daniel, let's change our attitude about the situation. And when we have a really excellent, high quality attitude, that means that we have the attitude of being a winner, being the boss of our own life, being in charge. Now you have real choices. You've developed the style.
I think you should be able to do. I think you should be able to do both. I think you should do both.
Do both.
You should be able to change your attitude and adapt mentally, but you should also make the changes that you can, right?
Right, exactly. I understand that. But I'm saying that let's do it in order, the proper order. You see, everybody's got it backwards. They want to fix the situation so that they can find a place to sit down and fix their mind. And that's backwards. We need to sit down and find a way of fixing our mind and getting ourselves happy and okay. And when we do that, we're developing the wisdom to be able to manipulate the outside environment in a wholesome way.
That makes sense.
There's also a negative bias going on, right? Like for me, I realize my mind is very tricky. It tells me, it try to convince me like, oh, those time in the past where I changed the situation first before I change my mind. Therefore, that is the best way, which is not true. There's these biases that the mind try to. I think that's the Mara, like that's doubt. I don't know.
I didn't catch that last part, Ivan. Mikey, can you
Oh,
go ahead, Mike, Ivan?
No, I said that's doubt. Like my mind tried to convince me the situation in the past where I changed the situation first before I changed my mind. Therefore, yeah, I mean, like Mara, right, trying to tell me, don't change my mind first, that sort of thing.
Oh, Rachel, I'm glad you're back. Yes, that's the really important point, Ivan. Can we remember when we're having thoughts of, oh, I don't like it here, I don't like this, let me fix this, let me fix that, let me go there. When we have those kind of thoughts, can you remember that those thoughts are unwholesome? And that the wholesome thought would be is to change that into, well, right now it's not so bad. The only reason why it's really, really bad is because I'm having thoughts that it's really, really bad. Let me change those unwholesome, really, really bad thoughts into the thoughts of everything is okay, everything is fine. But we have to practice that often. I would recommend that we start doing that on a schedule every day. Take 5 minutes every hour and spend 5 minutes every hour actually having the intention of having wholesome thoughts. Everything is okay, everything is fine, not a worry in the world. Well, I'm glad I can just sit down and relax for a moment. No problems, no worries. And do that for a little while, and the rest of your hour is going to be better. But if we spend that 5 minutes saying, oh, I wish I could get another job, oh, I hate the management, oh, the work is not really worthwhile doing, etc., like that, then we're not going anywhere other than down the tube of our own self-made hell. So let's start practicing. Let's start practicing being okay. Everything is okay. Everything is fine. Not a worry in the world. We need to practice that. We need to develop new habits, new skills, so that whatever situation we find ourselves in, you can do it okay. Here's an example. You're out on the road and you have a flat tire. How many people hate having a flat tire? You want to go. The tire is flat. Oh, poor me. I've got to change the tire. It's a lot of work. Well, guess what? With that mentality, changing the tire is going to be a lot of work. But let's say that you come from a gym and you've worked out and you're all up and powerful and you have the flat tire. You can say, hot dog, I can fix that. I don't even need a jack. I'll just pick up the back end of the car all by myself. And so
Dhammarato, this kind of reminds me, there's this one time I really had a flat tire and like I was rushing to somewhere and I start telling myself a bunch of pity story, like why this happening to me. But then like just for a few seconds, I tell myself like stop making up shit, and I just fix the tire. I actually find it to be the most enjoyable things that happened to me that day. And it's kind of funny. It is so enjoyable. I still think about it sometimes.
yes, when you have the right attitude, then whatever you're doing is enjoyable. And oftentimes we don't have that much of a choice about what we're going to do. The question is, how do you feel while you're doing it? There's actually an example. It's you can see let us say a window that's got 4 panes. You've got a crossbar and you've got a vertical bar. All right. So in the lower bottom quadrant is, I don't like it. I don't want to do it. I'm not going to do it. And then on the other side of the vertical bar, I don't like it, but I'll do it. But I don't want to do it, but I will do it. And now in the top quadrant, you have the position of, I'm okay, I'm just fine. If I don't do it, that's all right. And then on the other top part, I have a really good attitude. I'm okay, everything is wonderful, and I can do it. So it's not a matter of whether you do it or you don't do it. It's your attitude about how you're going to do it. If your attitude is wonderful, then you've got a better choice of either doing it or not doing it. If you have the unhappy attitude, then often we feel stuck. I've got to do it, and I don't want to do it. We don't even give ourselves the choice of, well, I'm not going to do it. We do it in fact, we don't do it from a sense of rebellion, in a sense of hatred, in the sense of, I know it's got to be done, but I don't want to do it. It's kind of like a 2-year-old in those terrible twos saying no, 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 no to everything because of our poor attitude. Then in fact, you could say no, 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 with a very, very happy attitude. The choice is yours. Can you be happy when you make choices? Then in fact, as I said, if you are happy and joyful and on top of your game and you feel like a winner, then you have more probability of making wise choices rather than foolish choices. So, Vinny, do you have something to say about this?
Oh God, tough one. No, I think at the end of the day, if you're not enjoying your work, then find something that you actually do enjoy. And like you said, if it's volunteer and it's not about making money, then do that. But I think if you're stuck in a job that you hate and you're not enjoying it and you're not making what you want, or you feel you're not worth what they're not giving you your worth, and get out and change it. There's so many ways of making money that's easy rather than being in a 9-to-5 job. You know, there's trading, there's investing, there's different things. So sure, but at the end of the day, ultimately what you say, it's about being able to control the mind and the thoughts, and you can be in any situation and be happy, like you say. But that's the practice. I wish I was good at it. It's easy to talk it, but really difficult to do it.
Right. You can change jobs and go from one miserable job to another miserable job to another miserable job, and that's the way people normally do it. They're climbing their employment ladder, but they're not enjoying doing it.
Yeah, but then they find a job that they actually like, and then they're happy with that.
No, they're not.
That happens too. Yeah, it happens.
No,
What are you
it
talking
doesn't.
about? That happens.
No,
You
they're
should
still
you should
going to be
you should
miserable. They
investigate
might.
that option. I don't necessarily agree. You might be find a job and you're like, wow, this is actually great. That should
All right,
you
you
should
can
dismiss
say that.
that.
You can say that, but here's the point: is that you're not going to enjoy it every day. You're going to
Sure.
fall back into
That
that you're
well,
going to be
that's when it's good
miserable
to be able
because
to
you
have a
have.
good attitude.
Go ahead.
Well, that's when it's handy to be able to change your attitude. Not every single moment of your life is going to be happy. In
Yeah, a
that
good
case, it is
job does
useful
not
to be
make
able
you happy.
to be happy. But still, you have a lot of agency in your life. You should pursue your desires freely. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, personally.
No, what I'm saying is let's pursue that wisely. Here's a really good example, Elon Musk. Don't you think he really enjoyed making Teslas? Don't you think he really enjoyed doing the SpaceX and the Starlink? And yet, look how miserable he is.
How do you know?
Huh?
How do you
Because the
know?
internet is full of it. The internet is
I mean,
full
maybe
of
that
it. He's
guy's not
trying to
living the
buy a
healthiest life,
president
but
and all
maybe
of
he's
that
having
kind
some
of
good
stuff.
times too.
Sorry? Well, go
That
ahead.
guy's rich.
Yeah. And he's
He
still
has so much money.
ordinary.
Come on,
He's
that's got to be
rich.
great.
Yeah, you think so. But Elon Musk is going from one thing to the next because he's never satisfied. He wants more and more
Sure.
and more and more.
Sure, you can't do too much of that. That's probably not health. That guy is probably not the healthiest. Maybe.
There's another example, and that is Bill Gates, which has, in fact, found a way of finding some happiness, and he's done that through philanthropy. That he's bought a lot of medicines and given it to Africa and done some other things, and he feels really good with that. But when he goes back into the greed, he's back miserable again. You saw that with the robber barons during the first part of the 20th century with Rockefeller and Biltmore, Morgan, all of those kind of guys. They wound up making foundations where they could get rid of some of their money, and they felt good helping other people. But they spent most of their time greedily trying to get as much money as they could, and they still were not happy. That the most wealthy people in the world are also the most miserable people in the world. Yeah, they might party down, but they're still unhappy inside. They still want more and more because they haven't actually practiced the Dhamma. So where if you actually practice the Dhamma, getting a lot more money becomes less and less and less important. So if we can practice so that we have enough Dhamma and we're happy, then enough money is a whole lot less than it used to be, because we have been trained in our society that money makes you happy, and it doesn't. There's kind of like a bottom line. Below that bottom line is poverty that is painful and excruciating. But the monks are practicing in a way of let's be happy in the mind so that that bottom line can be lower and lower and I can still be happy. Where most people say, oh, that bottom line, if I'm below it, I got to raise that line so that I can be happy. And it's not where the line is that determines whether you're happy or not. It's whether you can control your mind through correct practice. And so being rich like Bill Gates, being rich like Elon Musk or Bezos or any of the other guys, being rich does not make you happy.
I think monks have a support system though, based on a Buddhist community where they get food and they have a monastery and they can live there.
Yes, in fact, that's what we're talking about with a commune that's actually a spiritual community where we not only support each other financially in the sense of just enough food, just enough shelter, just enough clothing, but we support each other emotionally, just enough well-being, just enough happiness. And so it takes both of those things. But when we have joy, the worldly issues become less and less important, to where our society has got it set up so that the more money you make, the happier you are in your job, the better off you are. The people who are happy in their job are kind of miserable. And a good example of that would be the policeman who's a bully all day. He enjoys hurting people. He enjoys busting them. But when he goes home, he's unhappy. And so he starts busting his family. And so if we can, in fact, change the mind, then we have an opportunity to change our environment wisely, rather than changing our environment because of circumstances. You've heard the phrase jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. That's what almost always happens when people change jobs. We wind up not liking the job that we got no matter what. We might like it for the first week or so. We think that we've gotten a cushy job, but eventually we've got to deal with all of the unwholesome qualities of our mind. The better thing to do is to get your mind together. If you get your mind together, the probability is that you'll find a way of getting into a monastic community where you can really help people. People who want to be helped, because the guys at work, they don't want to hear Dhamma. They want to hear how good you're doing financially. Or actually, they don't. They'll get jealous if you tell them. This is why IBM and a lot of other corporations, they require that you keep your salary a secret. Because if you tell around and everybody knows what everybody else is making, you're going to have a whole lot of jealousy, a whole lot of envy, a whole lot of issues, to where in that regard, ignorance really is bliss. I've heard that. Have you heard ignorance is bliss? Me, I don't know. But the whole issue that we're saying then is that in that sense of stop comparing. Come to the point that right now everything is okay. Right now everything is fine. Right now no problems. If we practice that over and over and over again, it will begin to transform your life so that you're actually happy, safe, and secure in the situation that you're in. And then you can make wise choices about changing jobs or changing your situation or whatever. So, David Ogden, do you have any comments to this?
Yes, I like my job.
That's a start. That's a good attitude to have. It's not really the job that's okay. It's your attitude about it.
Right.
A job could be good too, though.
It is a good job, and I
A good job.
Well, Daniel, here's a question for you. Is the job that you've got, is it good enough?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, I got a pretty sweet job, but I haven't started it yet. But I don't know. I don't like having to work in general. I'd rather just be like a billionaire and have like a mansion and just be able to chill and do whatever I want.
So
But
that
I mean,
means
as
that
far
it's
as
not good enough,
relatively
whatever
speaking,
the job is not going to be good enough with that attitude.
well, yeah, that's a pretty high bar, I suppose, but it's good to aim high.
No, it's not good
Or
to
not.
aim high because that means that where you are now is not good enough. Stop aiming
Can
high
it be
and
both?
start being satisfied with where you are.
It can be both, though, right?
Well, as I've said several times already, if you can get your mind straightened out, then you can make those kind of choices wisely. And right now you're saying, oh, I'm going to make the choice. I don't care how I feel. I'm just going to make my choices stupidly. And I'm
Yeah, but what's the
suggesting that you
real
get
way
your
of
mind
getting your
together.
mind straightened out? How do you get your mind straightened out, really? What's
A
the
little bit
magic pill?
to work at it.
I don't
What's
think
what's the true way to do it? I do not know.
Yeah.
Anapanasati. Remember to
Oh,
change your unwholesome thoughts to wholesome thoughts over and over and over again.
right.
That's the way we do it. You start having wholesome thoughts. Start having the thought of everything is okay, everything is fine. The job is okay, the job is fine. Because you're in that job, why not enjoy it? If you're going to take the job and say, I'm going to be okay in that job. Everything is fine. That's what we have to practice over and over and over again, is that Eightfold Noble Path of look at the thoughts that you have, because you can remember to look at the thoughts you have, and then make a change to those thoughts to change them from unwholesome, I don't like this, into wholesome, everything is okay, everything is fine. If you have something unpleasant to do in the job, then get your mind together so that you're back into a state of pleasure. And now you have a choice wisely. Are you going to do that or not? And if you do it long enough to where you become dissatisfied with it and you don't like it anymore, then stop working for a little bit. Get your mind back together again. Get yourself into happy mood, and then go back and do it again. So the real point is not whether you get the job done or not. The real point is can you maintain and reestablish your happiness over and over and over again, unremittingly. Come back and get your mind together. Unremittingly is the word that's used. Keep coming back to getting your mind straightened out, and then you can go do for a little while anything. Do it until you get your mind all screwed up, and then come back out of it and go into seclusion and get your mind straightened out again. Take a break is the way they say it.
I think I made about $50,000 in Bitcoin, but I'm not really satisfied because I didn't feel like I did anything. It just happened by itself. I keep busy by playing the drums, trying to teach drum lessons, trying to play the guitar, and exercising, riding my bike, cutting firewood. I enjoy a certain amount of work, but if it's overwhelming, then it gets stressful.
Yeah, everything will get stressful when you have a stressed out mind.
You just need enough time to take a nap after you exercise.
Uh-huh.
Dhammarato, doesn't this revolve around craving? The craving not to do anything is a craving. The craving to not work. The craving you have too much money, but it's never enough. It's always a craving.
Well, taking a break is not craving. It's actually taking time off. What we crave is something that we can grab, something we can hold on to. And relaxing means that we're not holding on to anything. We just relax. Now, it's actually quite possible, like in Daniel's situation, to where he's got the job, but he's craving being free from it. And the real possibility is that he can just take a rest. He can get his mind out. He can stop.
But I just took a 3-month break to be unemployed and chill, And now I'm like, fuck, I need money to pay my rent. So I had to apply to jobs for 3 weeks on Indeed and LinkedIn and whatnot. And then I got a good job offer, and now I have to work.
You can
So
enjoy
you
it
see
if
my
you change
predicament?
your attitude. You can change your attitude. Work on that.
Sure.
You
Sure.
worked on getting a job. Now it's time to work on your attitude.
I would work for a while, and then I'd get stressed out, and then they would fire me or get laid off. Then I'd collect unemployment, and I'd learn some more skills, and I'd get another job, and I'd work there for a while. And then after a while, it's just stressed out, and they decide, let's get rid of them. So I get
No,
laid
I don't
off
get
again.
fired. I'm a hard worker, and I don't take handouts. I don't take handouts. I'm independent. I'd like to
It's
just
nice
have a
to help
house
your
and just like not
friend.
have to work. That's kind of my dream. That's all I'm saying.
Mhm.
Like I wish I had just had a nice house and like internet connection and my basic needs, and I could like go to the gym, and I would probably meditate and stuff here and there. That's kind of my ideal thing I would like, but it's
All
not
right.
feasible to like
So
retire
what
like
you
that
could
when you're
do-
25.
But that ideal that you have is unwholesome.
No, it's good. It's simple. It's simple. I think it's a pretty
No,
good
because
goal.
you're still dissatisfied. Look at the fact that you're
I'm
not
having
satisfied.
a good time day to day too, but I really would like that over anything. It's
Right,
both.
well,
Like I
why?
have a good time on the daily,
Why
but
do you want
I would
something
also
that you
like it
don't
to be
have?
better
Listen to me. Why do you want something that you don't have?
because I don't like it the way it is now.
Yes, exactly. If you practiced
Yes.
it where everything was okay the way it is now, then you would be in the state of wanting it to be better.
But I disagree with the attitude of just contentment with the way things are as the sole solution to things. I think
I
that's
didn't say that.
ultimately limiting.
You're
Huh?
not listening. Let me say it
I
again.
am.
That when you are in a state of satisfaction, you can then make wise choices. And the wise choice would be to stay in a state of satisfaction. The
I
wise
am. I'm
choice,
happy. I'm a happy guy.
all right? So when
Yeah,
you start to having
that's
thoughts
true.
about this is not good enough and that's not good enough, you can change that thought of where everything really is okay right now.
Why be unsatisfied with the dissatisfaction? That's unwholesome. You want to change the way that you naturally are of being unsatisfied.
But if you're not satisfied with
content
the
with
way
my-
things are now, then that's not satisfaction. You're trying to put satisfaction in two tiers, and I'm not putting it in two tiers. I'm putting it in you're either satisfied or you're not satisfied. And if you practice being satisfied, you'll be better off. You can make wiser choices because you're satisfied. See, you haven't gotten there yet. You're trying to dream or imagine it rather than practicing it. I recommend
No,
that you
I'm a
start
happy person.
practicing.
But I'm happy. I'm happy every day.
If you want a
So,
nice
like,
house, I mean,
that is practicing it, isn't it?
What I hear when you say that is you're trying to justify it. You're just trying to
Perhaps.
justify instead of
Sure.
practicing. You need to practice rather than justifying how things are and being dissatisfied even in your satisfaction. The better thing to do is to actually practice to get really satisfied, and then you can make wise choices.
Oh. Anyone else want to chime in?
I think if you want a nice house and nice things, the biggest thing with that is that it impresses women. And if you have an attachment to women,
No. It's not about women at all. I maybe I'll get like one long-term partner eventually. It's not about impressing women. It's about my own well-being.
So
you don't
you're
need to
saying
I don't care about women. Huh?
you're saying that, you know, to have a house, have internet, have sort of things, that's like the highest aim for you, right?
Yeah.
What we're
Like I
saying
have that
here-
now relatively, but it's somewhat dependent on society. So I just like to be a little less dependent on society, and that would be even better. But I'm also a pretty happy guy now.
So
That's kind of where
practice
it's at.
being less dependent upon society. Start having thoughts of, oh, I don't need any of that. I don't need that society. I'm already okay the way I am.
Yeah, that's the real highest aim, is if you can be satisfied right now. If you're saying, oh, I'm I'm a happy guy, but I'm not satisfied, then you're not really happy. Say, oh, I'm happy every day, but I want my life to be different. You're not really happy with the way things are.
This is why we have to investigate the mind.
You know what? I think
Investigate.
maybe I concede.
See, I can
I'm
see your
not happy with the way
dissatisfaction.
things are.
I can see your dissatisfaction all over you. The only person in this whole group who cannot see your dissatisfaction is you.
No, I just said I'm fine. I'm